The presentation was recorded live in Cincinnati, Ohio for CALLERLAB's 25th Annual Convention. This is Tape 8, Debate on T2000 Proposals, Part 1.
Let everybody come in and get seated. A couple of hours that we're going to be here is your chance to discuss the T2000 proposal. We have all of the panelists here to answer questions. If you have questions, we'd like to have them directed at the panelists. We'll try to pass it around so everybody has an opportunity to speak. And it's your chance to ask questions and offer your opinions, for that matter, as to what you think of the T2000 proposal. This microphone over here, we're going to reserve for the pro side. This microphone over here for the con side. And the neutral ones. Well, neutral, just help yourself. I just found out something. Kip Garvey is my senior. I really like that. 1 year. I'm sure from traveling around the country, from everything that I've seen, there are so many people have so many questions as to what the proposal's about. You listen to all the discussion this morning, and I think that clarifies a great deal. There are pluses and minuses. Now is your chance to ask. So if you'd like to start if you have questions, or if you'd like to make a statement, now's the time to do it. Again, the panelists are Daryl Clendenin, Mike Jacobs, Kip Garvey, Mike Seastrom, Gregg Anderson, and Jim Mayo. And the floor is open. It's up to you. If you'd like me to read the proposal again, I'm happy to do so.
Will you make a restatement of exactly what we're going to vote on Wednesday? Exactly what we're voting on Wednesday?
Okay, then I will read the entire thing, because that's what we're voting on. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of CALLERLAB agree in concept to establish and endorse the following set of dance programs that may eventually replace the existing basic, mainstream, and plus dance programs. The exact names of the herein proposed programs, as well as program content, implementation, and ultimate disposition of the existing basic, mainstream, and plus dance programs will be determined 1 year hence by a special ad hoc committee to be named Target 2000 Ad Hoc Committee, appointed immediately by and reporting directly to the Executive Committee. The herein proposed dance programs will not be initiated and implemented sooner than January 1, 2000. It is the expressed intent of this proposal that the general membership have the ability, by way of a vote at the 1999 CALLERLAB Convention, to ratify the work done by the Target 2000 Ad Hoc Committee, which will be presented to the membership at that time by the Board of Governors, or to reject such work, in which case the existing basic, mainstream, and plus dance programs shall remain in force. The proposed dance programs shall be structured as follows. Number 1, the proposed first dance program shall contain calls from the existing basic program list that can be readily taught in 12 sessions, each session being 2 hours in duration, from standard applications only. And, number 2, the proposed second dance program shall contain calls that are currently listed in the existing mainstream and plus programs, or calls from the basic program that were not selected for inclusion in the proposed first dance program, if any, that can be readily taught from standard applications in 12 additional 2-hour sessions. And third, the proposed third dance program shall contain the extended applications of all calls listed in the proposed first 2 dance programs. This proposed third dance program could be taught in no less than 25 additional 2-hour sessions. Furthermore, as an integral part of this resolution, the CALLERLAB membership hereby agrees that the proposed third dance program is an umbrella type of dance program. Dancers in the proposed first dance program, after learning the listed calls from standard applications, may learn the extended applications of the calls contained in that first program before going on to the proposed second dance program. However, all dancers are strongly encouraged to learn the extended applications of all calls contained in the proposed first 2 dance programs before going on to the fourth program, which currently is advanced. It is further agreed by the CALLERLAB membership that the existing basic, mainstream, and plus dance programs remain intact and in use through the design phase of these proposed new dance programs. Callers are encouraged to begin the formation of dance clubs that dance only the currently listed basic calls in preparation for the implementation of the new dance programs, as well as the perpetuation and preservation of the activity. That's the resolution in total. Okay. On the left here, Art and Anthony. Art, please identify yourselves and speak into the microphone. It is being taped.
Let's see, you just told me I'm Art Anthony, right?
Yes.
Okay. From Rogues Island, I guess we call it now with our politicians. I hear a few people say, gee, I'm kind of afraid to vote for this. You know something? I'm kind of afraid not to, and I'm not 100% sure if it's the way to go. But I don't know, what was it, a couple, 3 years ago when Jerry Story just kind of brought this thing up? I think I made a statement like, if we sit around and don't do one thing, we're in big, big trouble. If we do not vote for this, and this is kind of a general question to you guys, what will happen? We just keep sailing on? Are we kind of locked in? We better vote for this? And how many changes are going to happen if we do say yes to your proposal? Yeah, Daryl's good on the answer.
I think probably everybody, or nearly everybody, will accept the fact that there's some changes that need to be made. And the recommendation that was going around the boardroom last night was that whether this passes or fails doesn't make a lot of difference to our future. We need to make some changes, and the committee, whether it's the present committee or a new committee, will be instructed to come up with something, some kind of program changes that are going to be acceptable to the square dance community as a whole. Okay? Does that answer?
Yes, somewhat.
We're not proposing to. You've got to understand, this proposal is put together as an all or nothing package, which is the way the ad hoc committee wanted it presented. A lot of us could agree on different parts of the package, but don't agree on it as a whole. And so if this does not pass the way it is, maybe just a little change, a few changes here and there could make it to where it's acceptable to everybody. So they are going to be instructed to continue working on towards something that's going to be helpful to the activity.
Well, I think I heard it wasn't cast in stone.
In further answer, though, is the stuff that Daryl was talking about was that there were a lot of issues that were brought up that didn't have anything to do with lists as per se. And so this is an attempt to backdoor any changes in the list as much as it to address a lot of other issues that got brought up that are part of this whole package. Recruitment, marketing, a whole bunch of other things that even if this passes entirely the first time, we still have to be taken care of. We may find that we have polished the huge hunk of granite down to a nice-looking piece of stone, but we still got to find out how to sell it to somebody. So there's more than just this part of it. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and we're trying to take care of that too. And there's a lot of work, and we need lots of help, folks.
The other thing is, you talked about this not being cast in stone. When this was passed for review last year at the Los Angeles convention, the board discussed afterwards that we were to attempt in this next year to gather consensus amongst our callers as to which way to go. This was a proposal, but this was not cast in stone, and I think that's basically what we need to do, that this issue's been with us a long time, and we're kind of at the first phase of trying to work something, find some common ground where we can all agree.
Well, I believe that you've made a great start, and I think I would probably vote for it at the present time. But there are some things about it that scare me a little. In other words, some modifications would probably be made before the actual vote. Is that what? Fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and remember, amendments are legal at the Wednesday morning meeting. Okay? Yes, sir?
Thank you. My name is Will Eads. I'm from Southern California. And there's an old saying, if the system ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's broke. In Southern California, it's very much broke. Unlike Gregg from Colorado Springs, he has a good mainstream program that I know of, and I know and for sure in the San Diego area and probably the Orange County, even LA area, we don't have a mainstream program. All we have, the first entry level is at the Plus program. And believe me, to ask someone to come through class and stay for a year, at least 9 months to a year, to learn to square dance so they can come out and be with their friends and square dance, is what would have to happen in order to get in the Plus program. We need an easy entry level, such as 12 to 16 weeks, and I don't know of any other way except from in the basic program itself. The basic program is a great program. There's lots and lots you can do with it. If the caller has a little imagination, he can do a tremendous amount just with basics by themselves. And I think that's where we're at. However, you ask the club, any club in Southern California, to become a basic club, and they will refuse immediately. What we have to do as callers is we have to take the bull by the horn. We are the leaders. We have to put together basic program. And if we have to run the dance and make the dances ourselves, that's what we have to do. But we've got to fix the system because it is broke in Southern California.
Okay. Again, if we could, we'd like the pro side over here, the con side over here, so that we can alternate back and forth, is what we would like to do. Okay? We just had a pro, we're going to go with a con. Okay? I had a con, I'm going to go with... No.
He had a pro, he was on the
wrong pro. Hello. Who's con?
Okay. For the sake of the tape, Pete Skiffins, the president of the Callers Club of Great Britain. Two things. Well, actually, I have a whole page full of things, and I don't want to hog the mic. Firstly, could you reread at the beginning of that proposition from sentence, it is expressed intent? Although we speak the same language, I'm not sure I really understand what you're saying at that point.
Expressed intent, which...
Listen carefully, troops.
Where am I supposed to go?
It is the expressed intent of this proposal. Well, it's halfway through.
Oh, okay, I see it. It is the expressed intent of this proposal that the general membership have the ability, by way of a vote at the 1999 CALLERLAB Convention, to ratify the work done by the Target 2000 Ad Hoc Committee, which will be presented to the membership at that time by the Board of Governors, or to reject such work, in which case the existing basic mainstream and plus dance programs shall remain in force.
At that time, does that mean at the convention and not to the membership in general beforehand?
I'm not sure I can answer this completely, but I'm sure maybe Jim can.
the expressions that are in there are not limiting in nature. We intend to follow the exact same procedures of voting that are followed at every convention. And that means that the conventioneers, the attendees at the convention, will obviously have their first say, which will be immediately followed up by a mail vote of the general membership. Is this your concern?
So, in other words, you're not going to send this information out so we can generally think about it before we come to convention?
It would have to, because we normally do not make quorum at this convention, the only way that business can be conducted is in the call to convention, which means the material that comes out to you in the directions beforehand would have to list every proposition and everything that's being debated in order to be even legal at that meeting. So it would not be put upon you as a surprise here. It would have to be published in the call to convention in order to have any legality.
Okay, I can live with that.
With the exception of amendments.
That's not the way it reads. My other point, and I don't want to hang about because there's a whole bunch of guys behind us, one of my main problems with this is the undefined program, as many figures as can be. To me, it's similar to going to a loan person and saying, I would love your money, and I'm quite happy for you to tell me how long I have to pay and how much I have to pay each time. That's my concern, or one of them.
Okay. Oh. All right. Over here.
Bill Donahue from Pensacola, Florida, transplanted from Indiana to California to Florida. As an afterthought, I'm just thinking we've all been talking about a program that will, what do I want to say, decrease the time factor in getting people into the activity. What would be another solution other than, like we're talking about a 12-week program now? Why could we not have an 8-week program with 3-hour sessions instead of a 12-week program with 2-hour sessions, which would give us a better selling point to the people who are becoming part of our class and going from there. So we would have an exhilarated type program, a quicker way to get entry into the program. Kip?
Yeah, Bill, thank you. The point that you're making is a valid one. There are a number of ways to approach solutions to this effort, to these problems, to these questions, to these challenges. And unfortunately, if we were to start today and address all the probable approaches we could take, this convention would have to be extended to maybe 6 or 8 months in order to cover everything. Now, that work has been done for us to some extent by the 1996 ad hoc committee that worked well over a year to try to filter out all the different options and decide which ones would be workable and would be most desirable. These options are condensed into this particular proposal. And that's why it was also the feeling of the ad hoc committee that the first thing we should do is analyze this proposal, decide to go with it or to shelve it, get rid of it, and take another approach. Because it is the feeling of the ad hoc committee that the best options are contained already in this specific package. And that's why it's being offered as a package. It should be considered as a package. And I'm not asking you to pass it on Wednesday. You need to understand that it is purposely vague because it lacks detail. The detail will be filled in between the years 1998 and the year 2000, actually 1999, when it's voted on again. All we're looking for here is approval to go ahead from this point with this particular approach. If you don't think that this approach is the appropriate one, then you'd better start thinking of another approach that you can then present and we can all discuss and go from there. Okay, Bill?
On this side.
Thank you. My name is Andy Pennock from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. In my area, first of all, I don't know that you're going to have an answer for my situation or our situation, but I'm a square dance caller for 5 mainstream clubs in my area. In my first hour and a half of each evening of this, I teach new dancers to work them into the club. I don't know how I'm going to work after 2000, if this is passed, to change all these clubs to accommodate a 12-week program. I might, but I don't have any other nights that I can do it on. So I'm really looking at something that maybe I can't manage myself, And and I would like to have, and maybe what Kip was saying there, that the answer is going to come out over the next 2 years, and I hope it does. But it's going to be pretty difficult for me to try to work something like this. Also, I'm looking at 50 other square dance clubs in our area who are going to all have to change as well, too, which once you have to accept the fact that all the callers in my area are not CALLERLAB members. They may not agree with it, so we have a problem there. We also have an association that has to accept the concept. So there's got to be done an awful lot of selling, not only to the callers, but also to the dancers. And hopefully that we're going to be able to come up with some information over the next couple of years.
I think that communication goes both ways, and that's what CALLERLAB needs, is the communication from people in your situation. At present, we're looking at most of the mainstream clubs to be involved with the P2 part of the proposal, and so as to not have to drastically change the number of weeks that you actually teach your new dancers and change the content of your program that much.
If I understand your question correctly, let me say that I don't believe anybody intended to say that we must all teach 12-week 2-hour lessons. What we intended to say is we're going to select a group of calls that could be taught in that period. How you choose to schedule your teaching will vary among all of us. The only reason for mentioning the 2-hour 12 weeks was to establish a quantity limit for how much we could include in that program. The actual teaching schedule will certainly be up to individuals as it is now. Actually, a couple things. First off, I think you have to remember the environment that the original list came into is that we were not the large-scale membership that we were, but we were a small group of people trying to set forth the standard in the mid-70s. When we set that standard up, we weren't sure whether anybody would adopt it or anybody would go that way. We thought it would be a long, hard process for mainstream plus all those terms to become part of the square dance world. And it was grabbed onto very quickly, surprisingly so. Maybe it's what really got us out of control in the first place, was we didn't realize the willingness of the square dance world to convert over to these standards. So at the same time, there were problems for everyone to adapt. Certainly in the area of the country that I came from at that time, Louisville, Kentucky, most of those calls that were mainstream were not any part of our program. We had to make a jump up to get the mainstream. But it was done. And it was done by the process of it getting called and taught, and dancers deciding they liked that much better than the disorganization that occurred before. And that's going to be the ultimate judge of what goes on, whether it's accepted by the community at large as something that's a positive, or if it's going to be another problem, in which case we'll have to go somewhere else. But I think ultimately the marketplace is going to determine whether this is successful. I don't think we can do it ahead of time.
Nasa Shukar from Dallas, Texas. Have you heard about this hotel's frequent guest program? It's different from hotels you tried in school. You start by staying way out back in the second-class rooms. If you show up here every week without fail, you'll become a full member in just 1 year. The program accepts new members only once a year. Although it was very popular 25 years ago, today there are plenty of empty rooms. Want to know a secret? This hotel doesn't really have a frequent guest program. It was all a concoction shamelessly used to make a point. Besides, no one would sign up for such a program anyway. Would you stay in a second-class room every week for a solid year when a hotel under construction accepts new members several times a year, and you'll be a full member in just 12 weeks? But don't try to get into the new hotel. You can't get in. They're booked solid.
I'd call that an analogy. Is that right? Yeah.
No comment.
No comment, Don.
Or an asserism. Don Beck, Massachusetts. I keep working on trying to keep an open mind, as I hope most of you are doing. I'm on this side of the floor because the line was longer. I mean, because I'm basically pessimistic. Andy was up here just before, and I think his specific questions are what I was planning to talk about much more generically. And I have several questions. Let me just do this one now, and maybe I'll get to the end of the line and do some more later. The question I have is, we've had a lot of people get up in this morning's session, you gentlemen, speaking about this, how we need this, about kind of things we will do, reasons we should, reasons we shouldn't. But I haven't heard anybody really address the way that we are going to implement this. I know Kip just said we're going to work the details out in the next couple of years, but I would like to have some kind of an indication that there's an inkling of that it's possible to implement this, that there are some thoughts on, granted we need something, but let's not, I'm scared of trying something if there's no practical way to implement it. And I would like to have some indication, some thoughts on practical implementation before risking what we have going in this direction. Now, by implementation, I mean, am I going to go back to New England and compete with my clubs by starting my own group? Am I going to go back to my clubs and say, you've got to run a parallel program and compete with yourself to try the new stuff to see if that's going to work and spread the potential new dancers thinner? There are just too many things to me that seem impractical that nobody has addressed how this would work. It's a great dream. We need an improvement. But what are we going to do when we wake up? That dream may dissolve. I'm either from you guys up here or others that have good ideas. I would like to see that there's an inkling of practicality to this before we proceed with it.
Let me start off in response. I suspect the others will have something to add. As you know, I was speaking on behalf of P1, and however that's constituted, whatever number of calls or selection of calls are in that program, that particular segment of this proposal serves my idea of how we must proceed. I believe that we have in the past had a very narrow view of the group of people that we want to become square dancers. We have been interested only in those who are willing to accept our vision, which is an extended number of calls taught over an extended period of time and delivered in a fairly challenging way. I think that there is a large group of people out there, as I said this morning, who would be interested in square dancing of a different shape, a different character. A square dancing that is not challenging, but is just fun. Just fun. It doesn't have to be intellectually stimulating. It can be enough to make you think, but without, as I often see, half the floor broken down most of the evening. The first stage in this program I envision as appealing to a brand new audience, a brand new market. And it does require that we go out with a brand new attitude to bring them into that program. I don't see it as immediately serving our existing groups. There may be, out of this new crowd of people that we could recruit, a few who like the vision of what we now have and would want to carry on. But if we set out with this program only to populate our existing view of square dancing, I think it's doomed to failure. I think we must change our attitude and establish a whole new program of square dancing called P1, or whatever we choose to call it, maybe square dancing. But from that group, they move on to become what we now have, if they want to. But we have to develop an interest in a different form of square dancing, and that's how I see the implementation of this program. We will have to start by recruiting different kinds of people into a different kind of square dancing.
You know, Don, these are great questions, and I had basically the same concerns myself when I was first introduced to this whole idea about 2 years ago. And let me bore you a little bit with a true life adventure, and I'll tell you exactly what I've been doing in my area, because I'm curious to know how are we going to implement it and what's going to be the ramifications. I went to my Plus Club, Thursday Night Club, and I said, this is not going to work anymore, guys. We're not taking anybody in off the street in September, trying to jam 119 calls into their craniums before April just so they can go to the Golden State Roundup in May. No way. We've been doing nothing but chasing people out of the activity. So here's what I proposed. I took Monday nights and in the same hall, and I started a P1 program. And I was excited the first night because somebody actually showed up. I had 2 couples. But I also had some help from my club. My club has agreed to go along with this just as a sake of measure, just to see if there's any value to it. I now have 2 squares in that Monday night group, and believe it or not, I'm actually making like $20 a night now. So it can be financially rewarding. The point is that we've now finished our first P1 type of program, and I'm beginning to see some problems come up and things that have to be faced. The implementation of this is not going to be easy into the existing square dance community. And what I'm beginning to realize, of course, is that we're going to need to isolate the P1 dancers somewhat from our square dancers and almost treat it almost like a separate recreation, if you will, as Jim is suggesting. It's also interesting to note that I did get some attention of some of the other callers, Nate Bliss in particularly, and we have a half a dozen callers in Northern California who are running a program that we're calling Classic 66. We didn't want to call it P1. We didn't want to call it mainstream, and we didn't want to call it basic, so we're just calling it Classic 66, a kind of a takeoff on the Coke thing, I guess. I don't know. All the good names were taken, so we're calling it Classic 66 among ourselves. And the callers are actually beginning to develop this now. We don't have, I can't say we have hordes of dancers, but we do have a few. We're beginning to set up certain Friday nights where we can all get together and dance our groups together. And we're getting tremendous support from my Plus Club, which was interesting to me, because they're turning to me now and they're saying, how many new couples can we, expect to come into the club? And I said, if I said 3, would you be happy? They said, oh, we were hoping for more than that. And I said, why? You only graduated 2 last year. So that'd be a 50% increase. And they said, that's not bad. So I said, I think there's a possibility that by the fall, I could have about 3 couples ready for you to come into the club. And they're supporting it, and they're coming over and they're dancing. And along with this, I also have been introducing more challenging choreography, if you will, to the Plus Club using nothing but basics. And they're just absolutely loving that because they've missed this. This has been a huge hole and gap in their education process, even if they've been dancing for 8 or 10 years. So the implementation of this program is going to have problems associated with it. I've tested the waters, and I think that these problems can be dealt with.
Can I comment on something Kip just said? I'm looking for permission to get in front of the group. In the line. Kip, this sounds very good and very interesting, and it's worth getting out and trying, but one thing that scared me that you said, your club is enthusiastic because they want to know how many people can go out of this entry-level program and supplement their existing program. It's a little scary, but you did answer my question.
Sometimes we see Indians behind every tree here. Quite frankly, you can't expect the club people not to react that way. I mean, that's a natural reaction. What I shy from, what I get a little gun shy on, is expressions like our entire existing mainstream community is at risk. I don't see that either. All right, I don't see the risk there. There certainly is going to be some changes. We're all going to have to meet somehow halfway on all of these issues. If we're going to have any change at all, then we have to accommodate these changes and make some changes. But there's not a risk factor anywhere. I have to say to my Plus Club, now, what they're getting excited about, quite frankly, is they don't have to sponsor those classes anymore. I've taken that over. I'm taking that responsibility over. I'm bringing the new people in on a separate night. All they have to be concerned with is dancing the way that they're currently dancing. Why are they excited? Because nothing's changing for them, except the harangue of advertising beginner classes and having to move these people along over a 9-month period. So that's what the excitement's all about.
To paraphrase Dr. King, I had a dream. It was caused by my daughter taking beginner lessons 2 years ago. She came to me one time and said, Spin chain through is really neat when she learned it the first time. And instead of going, well, there's spin chain the gears and there's all this other stuff, I smiled and said that I really enjoyed her comment. I was thrilled by it, and I enjoyed what she said then. And that's the attitude change that we have to have as callers and dance leaders across the country. The dream I have is having dances that are fully populated with the casual dancer that may show up once every 3 months. And instead of saying, where have you been, it's, I'm happy you're here.
That's good comment. And I hope you're enjoying this, because these are some very, very good questions that need to be asked. And it's great to see the response. Jerry?
Yeah, I have a question for each set of panelists, and I'll just ask all the questions if you might want to jot them. I'm Jerry Story from Mission, Texas. My first question is for Jim and Mike. You had the P1 session, right? Acknowledging that you are both very dedicated veteran leaders of CALLERLAB and of the square dance activity, are either or both of you willing to accept this new leadership challenge and start continuous 12-cycle classes and P1 dances? Please understand that this can be accomplished with 2 separate nights or sessions, or this could be accomplished all on the same night by creating a 4-hour session, 2 hours for class and 2 hours for P1 dancing. Therefore, having only to devote 1 night per week to this program, which I think we all know if we all did that, next year's convention would take on a whole new complexion. The next question is for Mike and Gregg. Could you and would you accommodate your existing mainstream and plus dancers with this newly designed P2 program? Please understand that the 12 classes that are referred to in this program is not etched in stone and could be more should that be what we find out is most desirable during the development stage of the P2 program. Also realizing that there will more than likely be some plus calls contained in this program, do you feel you could keep your existing dancers happy? And my third question is for Kip and Daryl. Realizing that APD, DBD, or extended application is a necessary factor in today's dancing, do you both feel that it would behoove us to look at P3 more as an umbrella type, strongly recommended criteria or prerequisite for advanced dancing rather than as a program in itself? And do you think that no matter what happens Wednesday morning with the vote, do you think that we should go ahead and make an attempt to further develop and define extended applications, since a lot of callers are having a hard time really deciphering exactly what DBD and APD or extended application is? I feel there's a little confusion there. Thank you very much.
Okay, first question was addressed to Mike Jacobs and Jim Mayo.
Yes, I would like to establish a P1 program. I think the environment would be very good if I could find a couple of newer callers or apprentice callers to work with. We would have the advantage of doing both caller training and dancer training at the same time. It would put them in an environment where they could help teach and recruit new dancers where they have the biggest connection to, and at the same time add some stability to the situation. And I would like to see the existence of the dance by itself, that P1 dances would go on and continue to go on and not just be a place where they stop before they go to the next train station. This is a place where they can get off. And I would like to be able to be a party to that. I grew up dancing in the 60s, and we didn't utilize a lot of the calls we have now, but I certainly remember enjoying the dances.
Excuse me.
Certainly, if I were at the stage of starting new groups, I would be thrilled at the opportunity to start them this way. I am not at that stage. I have the luxury of being retired. I have been calling for 49 years, and I am not now starting new groups. I would dearly love to find a caller, new caller, with whom I could work in my area to serve the people. I'll talk to your father and see if he'll allow it. But I did a private party for 6 couples last week. They came to me in the middle of the evening and said, "This is fun. If we got our friends together, could we do it again?" Well, perhaps. I would like to find a caller in my area able to devote the time. Unfortunately, the only one that I know of just had a heart attack and works nights. We need callers who are willing. Those of us who are in the twilight of our calling careers would be thrilled to work with callers interested in pursuing this, and I have no problem with the structure of any program that CALLERLAB approves.
Yes. I'll try to elaborate. I guess the answer to the question is, if the membership of CALLERLAB decides by majority vote that Plan A as opposed to Plan B is the way they want to go, I would support that and do the best I could. My choice would, in good conscience, would be either to support it or turn away from club calling, and that would be my decision at the time. I would attempt, as long as I could support it, to encourage the dancers to support it as well. Being from a strong mainstream area, establishing a P2 program would require more instruction, because many of the dancers in my club do not know plus calls. But if that was the will of the majority, then realizing we have to compromise, if that's what the compromise is, then we go on with it.
Jerry, my comment was, and you made some reference to the number of weeks, and my feeling is that in order to smooth the transition for our existing dancers and not to disenfranchise or disassociate them in any way, that we may need a little bit more than 24 sessions to keep their dancing consistent. And if that's what we decide to do, or even if we decide at 224 week or 224-hour sessions, I would be willing to do that too. And I think that we can make this program work for our existing dancers with them finding very, very little change. And the transition of that change, I think, would be very, very simple. I don't think it would take a long period of time. We've set a time span for quite a ways away, and I don't have a problem or don't foresee a problem making that transition very smoothly.
Okay, and that's the second part of the proposal, and then the final one, I'm going to give it to Kip first and then to Daryl, and they're talking about the extended applications.
Okay, there's a two-part question on the extended applications. The first part of the question was the implementation of extended applications as an umbrella type of non-dance program, if you will. In other words, can we begin to recognize extended applications as applying as an umbrella over our existing dance programs without having it being an established dance program? Is that correct, Jerry? Would you go? Okay. And my feeling about that is yes, but I have to qualify it. We're dealing with an area that really has been untouched. I mean, CALLERLAB has done an awful lot in examining and codifying definitions, styling, timing charts. We have a lot. But one thing that we haven't done directly is this thing called extended applications. We've done it indirectly by holding interest sessions on choreography and expansion of ideas, and everybody scribbles down as fast as they can a sequence here and there, and they run home and try it. But that's not what extended applications is all about in my book, and we have not done anything about this yet. Do I think that's a worthwhile project for the future, whether or not Target 2000 flies? The answer is yes. I think that's something that we should look at, and we should begin to codify as much as possible. What we've done so far is we have a book that's called Standard Applications, and with all due respect to the people who organized and developed that book, they did a lot of work, I think it's misnamed. I think it really should be named Minimum or Minimal Applications. And the purpose of that book was to, a newer caller could pick up this Minimal Applications book, for instance, and begin to teach a class from the first time and know what particular formations and arrangements certain calls should be taught from as an absolute minimum. That's what we have. That's all we have. We really don't... I certainly will. The book that we have so far, entitled Standard Applications, Basic and Mainstream, and it's the corollary book we have, which is Standard Applications Plus.
I just want to hear it again, so let's reiterate what you said.
I'm going to reiterate it one more time then.
I totally agree with you.
That book that we have so far describes the minimal applications for calls for the purpose of having newer callers teach for the first time their first class and present the material from the so-called minimal applications. It was not designed to even fully describe all of the standard applications of calls. There was a tremendous amount of dialogue and debate that went into the development of the book that we have so far. And that was a capitulation on the part of the people who were involved in that development, was the understanding that this be a minimal standard. So what does that leave us with? That leaves us with two things that need to be talked about, discussed, entered into a committee, and worked on. First thing is, what is actually standard applications? Is that different from our minimal applications? I believe it is, but I won't know until we sit down and hammer it out. And the third thing is extended applications. Is it worth our while to codify as many extended applications as possible? Because certainly it's not a single idea. It's a range. It's a range of applications of calls that go from so-called standard to the extreme, off-the-wall applications of calls. And then, once we have this all on floors and festivals, it's appropriate to use it with or without workshopping, with or without any prefacing, what we expect dancers to be aware of when they go to an open dance that happens to be advertised. How do they advertise them today? I'm not even sure. I was hired to do a dance in Southern California that was advertised as, oh God, what was it? It was hysterical.
Cross-dressed?
No, it wasn't cross-dressed. That's the second thing to go, Kip. Yeah, I know. I put it out of my mind because it was so incredible the way they advertised this dance, but it was like the hardest mainstream that they could possibly offer. And I want to ask you, who's going to go to that kind of a dance? I mean, this thing, as predicted, there was exactly 6 couples that showed up for this dance. All right? And it's ridiculous. So we have to understand that once we codify things, then we have to understand how we're going to use them and agree on the use of these things. So my answer to your question, Jerry, is yes, we can live with the concept of extended applications without it being a dance program, predicated on the fact that we sit down and codify things, put it on paper, and decide what we can agree to as extended applications.
Right. And I agree. I'll quote somebody that spoke this morning. It's myself. Even though I believe the dancers should have a good feel for the extended applications of the mainstream and plus programs before proceeding into advanced, I don't see the necessity of proclaiming it a standalone program. Now, your comment was an umbrella type situation with a very strong recommendation. Here again, part of the comments that I've heard through the year is the fact that we did not make this a required thing rather than a recommendation worked against us. Because there's too many guys say, well, it's just a recommendation. I can do it if I want to. I don't have to do it if I don't want to. So I don't think that really is going to solve the problem. I do kind of like the idea of making it the first part of the advanced program. I like to have extended applications there that I can dip into and say, well, I've been doing follow your neighbor with those boys hooking right hands forever. What if I do a left touch quarter with that outside too and have the girl step in with a left for that follow your neighbor and wind up with a nice little box 1-4 wave to work from or something. It's not all that hard, not all that deep to go into it to get something like that. I like the idea of being able to reach out and grab something and play with it, throw it or put it back in the toolbox till the next time I feel like I need it. But not from the next level. We're not speaking levels, are we? Program. Right. Should we create an extended application document? It would be very nice. Boy, I'll tell you what, that would be a major undertaking. I could see it creating an introduction to extended applications document. I can't imagine. That thing would probably be about that thick, and who would be able to afford to buy it, and who'd want to take the time to read it, if you're going to list everything. But I like the idea of having something, anything that's going to help all of us, and myself definitely included, and that gets some new ideas about different things that we can do with the movements that we already have. I like that idea of the document, yes.
Dave? My turn, huh? Dave Harry, Seattle, Washington area. Frankly, the whole proposal scares me to death because I come from a very, very, very strong mainstream area. And our area is still successful in square dancing. We don't have huge classes, but we still have people coming in taking lessons, and we may end up with 3 or 4 squares of new class people. If this proposal goes through, what I see happening in the state of Washington would be that everybody would rush to that third plateau of this program rather than backing up, because we already, in the mainstream program, we already dance from, you tell them to stand on their head and do a spin the top, they stand on their head and do a spin the top. So they're not going to want to back down to vanilla mainstream, so to speak. And so I see in our area the same thing happening that you're having down in Southern California right now, where the step from 0 to where they're actually dancing is so great that nobody will come in. Now, I will say I am really very much in favor of seeing a basic program come around. In fact, I would like to see it go even further than that, go back to the list that we had years ago, where the basic program was that very first column on the mainstream list, and then the extended basic program that we had, and then the mainstream program. And the reason why I say that is because I spend an awful lot of time teaching in the public schools, and I could foresee where in my case, and in yours if you wanted to pursue it, where I could take like kindergarten through third graders and teach them that first list of the program and have a dance once a month where mom and dad come out and watch their kids, and they come out and join their kids, and I've got a program that they can get involved with and dance with. And then when they become 5th, 5th and 6th graders, or 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, they get to do the basic program because they're capable of doing that much. And moms and dads still follow them, and I can see where those people would eventually like square dancing enough to where they would become part of my mainstream program that I have. And so on with it, on up the list. I think I really feel strongly our problem is in the way that we approach recruiting right now, not a matter of where our lists are at. I think if you work within the list program that you've got right now and educate your dancers that, yes, the basic program is fun and there's a lot of meat in that program that you can do, you can turn around and have a successful program. But if we do what you're talking about, I can't see where you're going to get both sides of the fence together. All I see is, okay, we're going to move up to this program, and we're not going to support that stuff down there because it's too simple, And
Dave, I have a question for you then.
Yes.
How did your area escape?
How did it escape?
It is, we obviously in a number of places have observed the same phenomena of people getting on the track and going on to the next level, and the push becomes such that suddenly there's a giant gap between beginners and the club reality, which is plus. I don't believe that you're out in the middle of nowhere. I don't believe that no one ever comes in with outside areas, nor do I believe that you don't face competition from videotapes and other things like that. Yeah. What made your area different that mainstream has remained a viable, surviving program? Tell us about it.
Well, I can't speak for all of the callers and all of the clubs in our area because I wasn't, I didn't sit in on how they handled it when it started. But way back when the plus 1, plus 2 list first came out, I was a fairly new caller with an adult caller with one of the clubs that I called for, and their push was, we got to do plus 1. And I sat in their board meeting and I said, well, that's okay. If you want to do plus 1, we'll go ahead and do it. But it means this, that every single one of your club members are going to have to come out and take a 10-week class of learning how to do those movements. And we're no longer going to teach. new dancers how to square dance. And I was very adamant about that. I said, I'll do whatever you want as far as the club goes. If you want to go ahead and do that, provided that your group gets behind it and make sure every single member goes through a set of lessons to learn that program. And there was no objections in the building. They all sat there and said, let's leave it the way it is. We're having a great time of dancing. You can introduce us to a few of those movements once in a while if you want, just as a pull it out of the toolbox, play with it, and put it back in the toolbox type thing. But yeah, let's leave it the way it is. And the biggest thing that kept them going the way they were running 10 square classes at that time, and they couldn't see shutting down that dance program for it. One other thing I want to say is, back in that same era, our Teachers and Callers organization set up a basic square dance program. And Bonnie and I chaired it for that first year. And we had a lot of callers in our organization that said, no, we really want a progressive dance that will progress on through the mainstream program. And Bonnie and I sat there and said, no, we'll have a progressive dance that starts from September and progresses on to the basic program and never goes any further. That first year, I think we averaged probably 6 squares on the floor, something like that, every single Tuesday night. It was very successful. We worked our tails off on that program. We were there every single Tuesday. We were there when somebody brand new would walk through the door. We'd make sure that we separated the husband and wife, and Bonnie would dance with one and I'd dance with the other. She'd dance with the wife and I'd dance with, whatever, however. But it was a successful program, and then we decided the next year we just really didn't have the time to devote that much energy to a program where the guy on the stage was getting a paycheck and she and I were on the floor doing the recruiting work. So we decided that we would turn our chairmanship over to the organization and let somebody else run it. In the second year, the person that came in line decided that they liked the idea of progressing all the way through the mainstream program. And the third year, the program did not exist. So it just died away and went by the wayside. And I always regret that we didn't hang in there and just bite the bullet and say, we're going to do it from here on in. Because it was a good program when we first started it out.
I come from basically the same area that Dave does. I'm Daryl, for the sake of the tape. Daryl Clendenin. The Northwest, I think it was probably caller control and leadership rather than caller competition and one-upmanship that kept mainstream alive in the Northwest part of the country. They did get together. The callers discussed it and decided that keeping mainstream was good for the activity. And for many, many years, now I don't know, I can't say that it exists exactly the same way now, but for many, many years, if you wanted plus level, you had to go to a totally different group away from your club, and generally speaking, it was a caller-run thing. The callers still had control over it. And you had to learn the full plus program just like you learned the full mainstream before you could go dance with that group. So it's a matter of taking a hold of the leadership again, like KIP is doing in their area, only just going the other direction, saying, well, okay, we've got this plus base here. We need to have mainstream or basic level again. Let's take a hold of the leadership reins and create this. And they've got a group of callers that are cooperating with each other and putting this thing back in order again. To me, really, it's just taking care of the programs and making them work. The programs are nothing but tools. They're toolboxes. Pull that stuff out. Use them properly. They will work for you if you just give them half a chance. If you're going to abuse the programs, they're not going to work any more than any other tool will work for you if you don't use it properly.
The other thing that we have that's in a real big favor in our areas is that we have a very, very strong state and council orientation of dancers, and they work very, very closely with our Callers Association, so that if a caller can go to a council meeting and be stand up and speak on a subject, and the dancers listen to them. We also have a leadership seminar every year that is very well attended, and some of you have been keynote speakers at that, and can attest to that. But I think that's where the key is educating your dancers and starting programs that will work with them, will work for them without destroying the programs they have. The Pacific Northwest is up in arms, and I think those of you that are at the main office at CALLERLAB have probably been flooded by the Pacific Northwest's comments on what they think of this program. They are scared to death up there too, because they don't want to see their program fail. It's successful.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got about 10 minutes here, and I would ask you not to take too much time at the microphone. And this gentleman is next on that side, and then you, sir.
Thank you. Will Leeds from California. You notice how I switched boats in the middle of the screen?
Yes, sir.
I really paid a lot of attention. I thought that was a pro side a while ago. Anyway,
all right.
Just a couple other comments I'd like to make is on the pro side of this thing, is that the associations, especially in our area, all the clubs down there are dancing the Plus program. There's no mainstream. We have one advanced club. I love the choreography advanced. I call advanced myself. However, we need to find an easy way for people to get into square dancing. And we're not finding it right now, along with a huge marketing plan, which I think should be the next undertaking for CALLERLAB. Once we get them in, get them locked in. I've started basic dances. The first one started Saturday night in my area. I have 3 good callers to work with. We're all going to work this basic program. I have leased a hall. We're going to have nothing but basic dances, no square dance attire required. There'll be people there in square dance attire. However, I want to make it easy for the people to find out what the social life of a square dancer is all about. Let them get in. Once they see what's going on, then they'll want to go further and even set up a program to where we can have a program set from basics right on into the plus, right on to the advanced if they want to travel that far. But make it easy for them to get in. And the associations, I really don't feel are going to work with me and help me promote this thing at all. Even to the point where if you have a dance, and it's a call-a-run dance, if you advertise in their book, their monthly book, you pay twice the fee as any other club. So to me, they're not really promoting square dancing, they're promoting their own clubs. And I think that's one of the other things, that associations have to get behind this thing, and they have to encourage the callers to do the basic program. And that's one thing. And another thing I wanted to say, too, is you look around the room and you don't find too many callers without gray hair anymore. What happened to all our young callers?
Silver.
Women have gray hair. I think we should make it easier for some of these callers to come in, give them a program to work with, such as the lower basic program, so they can come in and learn to call, and out of good callers also come good dancers and a lot more dancers. Thank you.
Real quick, my name's Bob Rollins. I'm from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. I represent some 40 callers in the Tulsa Area Callers and Teachers Association. We have 72 square dance clubs in that area. A couple of A, a couple of plus, the rest are all mainstream. We have a real solid, I believe, mainstream program. There's no I, me, my amongst us in the caller group. We're good we, us, our people. I wanted to mention this thing. A lot of you probably heard it because you're old enough. But an elephant is a mouse built to military specifications, and I suspect that that's where we're going with this thing. Dancers will only go where we take them, and that's the problem. The class length and the level of the dance rest with the callers. My thought is that a problem that we're having is the length of classes and recruitment is way down. Okay, and then we're coming up with this program that looks like nuke 'em till they glow, and it doesn't work that way. The reason dancers and callers in other countries use and dance the full definition is that they see our activity as a foreign language, and they learn and teach their dancers this foreign language. They have to start off with something called the basics. They have to define it. They have to teach that definition to their new dancers who also speak a foreign language. They teach them sentence structure. They teach them what nouns and verbs are and those things that we need, like circle left and circle right, who your partner is, who your corner is. Without an absolute sound basic language of sentence structure, you're not going to be able to create your paragraphs, and we call that mainstream. And once we get our paragraphs, then, this is not a pun, Jerry, once we get our paragraphs together, then you can create something called a story. But the idea is that you must have basics, and you must have a firm basics. And you go messing around and start pulling this out and pulling that there, and you're speaking pig Latin. So we want to make sure that we teach our dancers properly. And the guy that came up with this, what Kip talked about there, and I don't even you want to use that word, ought to be taken behind the door and talked to a little bit, because to me the definition is there. There's no DBD, APD, or whatever. The definition of the move is centers cast off 3/4 and the ends move up. It doesn't say boys do this and girls do that. No place does it say that. Centers cast off 3/4, ends move up. Everybody knows that's what that is. Okay. Recruitment. I'll give you 6 real quick ones. Here's the problem with recruitment. 2 parents working, video rentals, video games, computer webbing, single-family households, cable TV, hall rental. You've got to be able to figure out some way to get them out of their house with mama, and even with the kids. If it's going down to the park and calling with your club and getting people involved, if it's going to a church and working with that group, if it's putting placemats in the middle of a restaurant or something, got to come up with these creative ideas to get those people in there. As callers, we need to know how to teach and call basics, and we need to know how to make it interesting enough to hold any dancer before we try calling or teaching mainstream or plus. If you cannot call and challenge the floor on basics, you have no business being on the mainstream floor. And that's why the dancers have problems when they go up into the plus, because we get to learning something and we want to be a plus caller. And so we get on the plus floor, and we've jerked these dancers right on up there, and then they turn around, and I hear Kip Garvey saying, you know, I have these dancers, and I took them back to the basic floor, and they went crazy. It was so much fun. Well, he taught them the language structure of sentences that they missed because somebody jerked them on up to the plus floor before they had a chance to play with mainstream and basics. So I think that's what we need to work about. What do your dancers pay for at the door? Answer that question, and you might be all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, notice the order that you're standing in back here. We have to take a break at 2:45. And notice the order. Sir, you're there, and Jerry, you're there. Jerry will go first, then you, when we come back at 3:15. And again, I am so pleased to have everybody get up and give their opinions and ask the questions that you're doing. It's a great job. I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope that you're learning and gaining some wisdom. Thank you.